this as well on my computer. So the content that I'm going to be taking you guys through is essentially two presentations. So I don't know if we'll get through both of them. We might get through one. Um, but essentially, this is really a skill that happens once a sales call's booked. Okay, and um, you know we could talk about the process of getting sales calls booked, but that really just is marketing, okay? And that's something that we can talk about, ongoing. But this is really the skill of persuasion, the skill of sales. And the amazing thing about this process is that it's also a skill of persuasion that, you can use in family dynamics, persuading partners, speaking to bro, I'll tell you what, that's the funniest thing. It doesn't work on Danielle because she's like, shit, what crap has Paul been injecting into your head now? So in a way, like you got to be really fucking skilled to be able to do it with your partner. But I think it's the same with really anyone you meet. Okay, so you guys can basically practice this at any point throughout your day and your life. And when the penny basically drops for you, holy shit, it's a powerful feeling. Okay, so let's just dive in and see how far we basically get. Okay, so all right, so um, essentially this is the skill, guys, of developing high conversion, high close skills for high ticket sales. Okay, so we're not doing it's not necessarily skills for low conversion, low ticket. And this is really if you guys are selling things like one-on-one coaching, you're selling your higher ticket packages, you've got your $1,000 bottle of wine experience, which we've spoken about before, which ultimately could be anything really over $2,000. I could even be over $1,500, but anywhere up to 100K plus. Okay. So the skills remain the same in regards to what you're doing here. And obviously I got some nice pictures here, which basically just show, like the reason I got this picture from Midjourney, so I prompted it, but it was like, the things that you guys need to really dial down when you're doing sales calls is number one, like I print stuff off and I have it next to my computer screen to remind me of the process I'm going to take you through. Okay, so it's always there in the back of my mind. So I'm training myself on the things that I need to be listening to, and then the second thing is always be writing notes down. Okay, because the process of writing notes, number one, it makes your prospects feel like, holy shit, this dude's listening to me. Okay, so you kind of want them to even see you writing notes, but secondly, you will over time develop a bank of information where you'll be able to spot patterns in what your clients are saying to you. Okay, and so that's really really important when it comes back to the process of selling, but also the process of marketing, because everything I do from a selling point of view actually dictates what I do from a marketing perspective. Because there's literally no better time to gather data on your target audience than a flipping sales call, even if it goes wrong. Okay, because the questions that you're going to be asking them through this process are going to uncover so much important data that then feeds back into all of your marketing, and it becomes this really cool sort of system. But essentially, the skill that we're going through and the skills of communication, persuasion, and listening are hard to pinpoint or understand when you don't have them yet. Okay, so and this is like it's like this sort of experiential blindness thing. Like it's hard to understand what the skill feels like until you have it. All right, and you don't really know what it feels like until one day you feel it and you can see it and no one can take it away from you. Okay, and so this is really the process of what's happened to me over the last few months or whatever, and it's only getting better. Okay, or I would say years. And it's only getting better. But the cool thing is that you just start to notice things differently. You start to listen to people differently. You start to engage with people differently. And the outcomes of the calls and the conversations you have are completely different. And so, eventually something will click in your guys' brains. It might not be now, it might be, but eventually you'll get the sense that, oh shit, I can see. And like I said, that's what we're gonna basically give to you guys if you commit to actually practicing this process. So this is really just an introduction to it. And so I mentioned to you guys, I told you, some of you guys, about the feeling of, sort of born identity. This dude who had this experience where he went into a coffee shop and he was like, fuck, he had amnesia, but he could see things in a different light. Okay. And it's essentially you guys committing to the process of understanding this and practicing it in the conversations you have will literally put you, years and years and years or miles ahead of other people practicing old, outdated sales tactics. Because traditional sales is press pain points, make someone, handle objections, squash someone on a call, all of these things which we'll be discussing over this. But I first want to show you the scene from Born Identity that I'm talking about. So it's just a quick one. So I'll just play this for you.
I'm not making this up. These are real.
Okay.
Who has a safety deposit box full of money and 6 passports and a gun? Who has a bank account number in their hip? I come in here, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm catching the sight lines and looking for an exit.
I see the exit sign too. I'm not worried. I mean, you were shot. People do all kinds of weird and amazing stuff when they're scared.
I can tell you the license plate numbers of all 6 cars outside. I can tell you that our waitress is left-handed and the guy sitting up at the counter weighs 215 pounds and knows how to handle himself. I know the best place to look for a gun is the cab of the gray truck outside. And at this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking. Now, why would I know that?
Okay. So that's just a little anecdote, okay, and just a way to basically explain the process of skill development, especially in persuasion. Okay, and the reason this is so flippin' powerful is because in persuasion, you start to see the world differently. Okay, you start to remember different things. You walk into a room and you notice that there were these people there, there were this people there, this person said this thing to me. Oh, this person's talking from his values, this person's talking from his beliefs. Look how solid his beliefs are. You start to see different things in the way that you communicate with people. And I just love that scene from Born Identity because it really sort of showcases it. Okay, so developing high conversion, high close skills for high ticket sales is literally the same thing. It will give you a considerable advantage in the process of generating money-making opportunities. So we're obviously, focusing on the skill of sales here, but it affects all sort of areas of your life. And so what I want you guys to understand is that, in this job and basically in any conversation you have, and this is something you can start practicing immediately, is the fact that you basically have 2 main jobs. Okay. And the 2 jobs are the skill of active listening and the skill of knowing what to listen for. Okay, the skill of active listening and the skill of knowing what to listen for. You can see here that, when I typically ask people this question, they will say to me, Luke, yeah, my main job as a salesperson is to close the deal. It's to make the sale. Okay, but that's literally the thing that I want you guys to throw out of your brains, because the moment that is the focus going into a sales call, and we'll talk about the process of what happens to your clients, but it affects them negatively. Okay, and they can feel that. And one thing you've also got to understand is that in today's day and age, it is so flippin' rare to get onto a call with someone and for them to actually listen to them. And when I say listen to them, actually show them that they're listening and sort of communicate back to them and ask questions. I can't remember who said this, but it's like, get a man to talk about himself, and he'll talk to you for hours. And that's really the thing. You don't want to make this about you. It has to be about your skill of listening and what you're actually listening to. Okay. And so whenever you're communicating to persuade, you're selling. And whether you're selling an idea, a product, or a solution, or getting someone to trust you, you're selling them on something. Okay. And so, in order to get someone to fully accept what you're selling, you need leverage. Okay. And so this is what we're going to be talking about. It's like, okay, well, what is the leverage that you can use to basically persuade and to sell something to someone? Because when you realize that the dollars are literally already all around you. Okay. So if you walk into the coffee shop, you walk past businesses, you walk past people, there's millionaires walking literally, sort of shoulder to shoulder to you. The money is there. It's already created. Your job is just to persuade people to give it to you in exchange for your value. Okay. And so, social engineers, and this is a really good book that you guys can read, but, social engineers understand this and have used these skills to persuade people to give them their money in exchange for nothing. So it really is the root cause of all, con jobs. And, when people send you phishing emails or random text, it's literally tapping into the same processes. And so in Social Engineering, The Science of Human Hacking, which is a book I'm reading right now, he talks about this process of sort of persuasion, and for you guys, you got to understand this. Number one, to actually protect yourself against these tactics, but to actually use it in your favor to convince and to access all of the money that's actually around you right now, in the pockets of other people. And so you can use these same skills to get people to give you their money in exchange for your value. So we're using it, if you were to look at the dark or the light, we've got con artists and we've got people who are actually, persuading people to make change in their lives. If you get on a call with someone and they're overweight, your job is to persuade them out of their state of desperation into actually taking action with you, because you know that you have a solution that they need. And so, that's really, really what we're going to be taking you through. But, the starting point of this is actually understanding what's going on in someone's brain when they are having these conversations. And if you can actually understand this, this is really the first part of this whole process. Okay. So neurons communicate through electrical currents called potentials, action potentials. And so these are either excitatory or inhibitory. Okay. And so excitatory currents are those that prompt one neuron to share information with the next through an action potential, and inhibitory currents reduce the probability of such a transfer taking place. So if you really think about this for a second, okay, most sales tactics have been, basically talk to you about putting people into an inhibitory state. They say, press their pain points, make them feel the pain. And all that's doing is actually closing off what's happening in the brain, so they can't actually, sort of see future possibilities, which we'll talk about in a sec. But, we all possess the ability to trigger inhibitory states and excitatory states in ourselves and in other people. Okay. And so excitatory states are mental conditions in which an individual's behavior and expression is open and essentially unrestricted. Okay. You can see when someone is relaxed on a call with you, if you're speaking to your spouse, she's smiling, she's open, she's way more receptive to your ideas, versus when she's in an inhibitory state, where sort of mental states, where someone's thoughts, actions, and behaviors are restricted and suppressed. So if you ever try to convince your spouse or your partner of something when she's pissed off at you, closed up in a inhibitory state, you're fucked. Okay, you're not getting anywhere. Okay. And so you've got to be able to understand, number one, the person who's getting on a call with you, are they in an inhibitory state or are they in an excitatory state? It's very, very important. Okay. Because most convincing, sales, influencing, or persuasive attempts fail because the convincer unwittingly triggered inhibitory states within the person they were trying to persuade. Okay. So when people are trying to sell, when you're on a call with someone, if you don't notice that they're in an inhibitory state and you go through a scripted sales process, you try to press their pain points, you try to handle their objections, you're basically just dragging them deeper and deeper and deeper into that inhibitory state, and you're not going to get anywhere in that process. Okay. And this is especially true with partners, or prospects. And the worst thing you can do is trigger that inhibitory state. And we do it all the time, especially in the sales process. And so high conversion, high close, high ticket sales are dependent on your ability to move your prospects out of inhibitory states. and into excitatory states, because motivation sparks from excitement, not from inhibition. Okay, that's really, really important to understand. If you want someone to pay you a lot of money, they have to be in an excitatory state. They have to be able to feel good, because the difference is the hormones that are literally running through their body. So if they're in a inhibitory state, they've got stress hormones coursing through them. Okay, so they're closing up, they're closing down. Their brain literally can't, process things. Compared to an excitatory state where they've got happy hormones coursing through their body and they're fucking buzzing about what you're about to share with them. Okay, so step one really is shifting people from a pain and drama-filled negative states into positive states. And so once you open them to possibility thinking and being excited about opportunities, it shifts their outlook into the future. Okay, and this is basically them shifting into enhanced performance, into a new potentials, instead of closure where stress, pain, and drama are present. This is very, very important to know, because if they are in a stressed state, they can't see a positive future. All right, so good luck trying to sell them on your product, which shows them, hey, I'm going to help you get fit, I'm going to help you get, I'm going to help you play this music instrument, I'm going to help you make this amount of money. Good luck trying to convince them of that, because they're closed down. All right, and so basically what you need to do is leverage your authority more effectively and get less objections. Well, basically, if you move them into an excitatory state, you'll leverage your authority more effectively, get less objections, because objections come from inhibitory states and rarely from excitatory states. So typically what I say is, if someone is objecting to your sales process, if someone is saying to you, hey, man, this isn't the right price, or, I don't think this is right for me, chances are you've triggered that inhibitory state, and, compared to an excitatory state. So for example, I remember doing the sales call with this lady. Some of you will remember this story, but I had this lady, she jumped on a call and I could tell that she was just stressed. She was like, Luke, I'm struggling. I've got all of this shit going on in my life. These are all of the problems. And so what I did was, through the questions that I'll show you guys a bit later, I just guided her through the process. And by the third question, which I'll show you later, she started crying on the call, and literally crying with joy and happiness. Okay, so she was like, literally like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is exactly what I want. Thank you so much. This is, this is literally, the perfect match for me. And then she basically signed on the dotted line. Okay, because I spotted the fact that she was stressed at the start of the call, flipped her into an excitatory state, and then took her through the sales process, through the questions. Okay, and that's literally the power of moving them from excitatory to inhibitory to excitatory. And so if you think about it, if you're excited about something, if you're literally like, in touch with someone and they're telling you, about like this new possibility, you bloody well pursue it, you learn it, and you want more of it. Okay. And so it's the same with prospects. That's really what we need to elicitate from them, is getting them into the state where they want to actively pursue what you're selling them. Okay. And, again, this comes back to what we were saying earlier about this sort of, this need to actually throw out of your mind, I got to try convert this guy on the call or this lady on the call, because your solution is the prize. You have a version of what these prospects actually want. And when you start wanting what they have, the sale, the money, you're basically focused on external convincing, which is, one of the biggest problems in sales, in persuasion, in anything. So if you think about it, if we look at, this is like a common, or I wouldn't say it's a common thing, but it's a problem that I bump up to, is if Danielle, for example, is in inhibitory state, and I start going into my, sort of reactive mode of like trying to solve her problems, I'm trying to externally convince her that, her feelings are invalid. And it's like, hey, just listen to me, just do this, just do this. And I'm trying to convince her, and she just goes deeper and deeper and deeper into an inhibitory state. And it's harder and harder to actually get her to see, a solution in that situation. And so, the more external convincing you actually do, the less they are able to see the opportunity, because you've triggered that inhibitory state. Okay. So if a person gets on a call with you and they basically say, hey, I'm tired of working, I'm tired of getting nowhere, I'm fed up with being stuck with my job, and they've got a bit of a bland look on their face, okay, in the back of your mind, it's got to trigger, okay, shit, this person's in an inhibitory state. All right. And so they're basically expressing that to you, which is restricting their thinking, their behaviors, and their abilities to see solutions or opportunities you might present them with. So before you go ahead sort of blabbling about your product and your service and all of this stuff, you got to deal with this first. All right. And so when a person is deeply involved with what they want to experience, in the opposite of an inhibitory state, when they're excited, there's very little resistance to moving forward on what they want. Okay. And this is, the basis of high ticket sales. It's an excitatory state where all sorts of limiting conditions melt away. And in this state, prospects, people, partners are more able to focus on opportunities and solutions that benefit them. Okay. So when you move a person into their dream state, and that's important, they are experiencing what they want. And so for high conversion, high close sales, your job is to connect your product, your service, or whatever you're selling to their dream state. Okay. And so, first and foremost, I just want to take a pause there, because what we're doing now is we're moving from, all right, inhibitory state to actually shifting them out of that. How do we do that? And the key really is understanding their dream state. Okay. So we'll get into that in the second portion of that. I think we're actually blasting through this, which is good. So before I move into the next part, which is obviously the questions and whatnot, does anyone have any questions? And is this making sense so far? Simon, maybe no, maybe.
Luke, can I ask a question?
Yep, yep.
So I can move people from one state to the other, but I can't, like, I really don't know how to do that if there is money in between the situation and me.
Yep.
Like I can do that, but then I don't want to move a person from state A to state B and then say, okay, now give me something for that. It
Yeah.
just feels wrong.
Yeah. So what I'll do is the second part will probably give you some ideas. We can chat about it after, okay?
Okay.
But I've made a note for that. Simon, brother, talk to me.
Yeah. Um, it definitely makes sense. Like, I just wonder, I guess I'm still having this sort of like resistance to this idea um of like influencing people and like, it's just there's this feeling of discomfort. But I guess it just comes from this what I mean is I guess if you're well intentioned and if you're genuinely just trying to help the person and move them from a state of inaction, for example, into a like getting their shit together, then it's fine. I guess I'm just having a little bit of resistance to this idea of manipulating them,
Yeah.
in a way. But like I get it. I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that
that's
it
good.
is just this idea of what are your intentions in doing that.
What if someone came to you, okay, and they were literally like in the worst situation, they've ever been in their life, and you knew that you had the power to basically, solve all of it and basically help them, put them on the path? Would you say that manipulating them out of their current limitations and, blocks and issues that are going on in their brain, keeping them stuck in the same cycle, is a negative thing or positive thing?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a positive thing if you're a good person and you're genuinely trying to help.
Yeah, 100%.
Uh,
And it's
it's the
and
same skill. It's like you said, like light side, dark side. It's the
yeah,
same
100%.
skill, but used in a different intention.
100%, dude. And look, I would say that, if you guys which the majority of you are, you're in the job of helping people help themselves. Okay. And if you are in that business and you don't actually understand how to influence people, you know, because at the core of it, if we even take money out of the picture, you're trying to influence people out of their patterns, their mind, sort of limiting beliefs, really, at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no amount of external convincing that you can do to get them out of it. So you have to understand how to actually elicitate them to come to their own conclusions, around like, okay, well, what is the actual solution? Because, and this is something I did for a lot of my career. When I would get on a one-on-one call with someone would tell me their problem, and I would be like, just do this. Okay, just do this. Just fucking do this. What? And then, they would get off the call, and I'd be like, well, a week later, they would get back on the call and they wouldn't have done anything. And I'd be like, why? Okay. And because all I was doing was trying to just force feed my answers into their brain. Whereas a way more powerful way to do it would actually have been to use questioning and elicitation, which is what we're going to go through now, to get them to come to the answer on their own. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you can't provide a step-by-step process or can't provide a step-by-step plan, but how many times have we said that you can literally give someone all of the answers, but they won't take action on it because it's the shit that's happening up in the brain? Okay. It's literally inhibitory states versus excitatory states. Okay. Because if someone's in an inhibitory state, they can't actually see the roadmap, even if it's slapped them across the face. All right. So that's why, actually understanding and equipping yourselves with these skills of persuasion. Number one, being able to listen to people, knowing what to listen for, so then you can start to plant seeds in people's minds that allow them to take positive action. Now, if you guys read the book Social Engineering, okay, he actually writes a whole introduction on it, where he's like, look, people were like, why did I write this book? Because this is like putting dangerous information in people's minds, like showing people literally how to con people, okay, and how to do phishing attacks and all this stuff. But he said, look, it's actually my duty to teach this information, so you can, number one, protect yourself, and number two, you can use it, for good. So, there's that information's available to people who want to learn it. I'm just saying, on this journey, with what we're doing, we're on the journey to generating wealth for ourselves, to having freedom-based businesses, and helping people along the way. Okay. And providing a service along the way. Fuck me. It doesn't even have to be helping people. You could literally just have a business, doing flooring jobs. Okay. Whatever it is, like, doesn't even have to be in coaching, but you have to understand sort of this process. Otherwise you are, you're really winging it. So
Can I say something just quickly?
yeah.
I understood something now about the guilt, or what Simon also was saying. I think my problem is if I see someone having an issue and then I know that I can provide with a service that can help them. My problem, I think, in my brain is that I think, oh my God, he's already or she's already having an issue. Now, if I ask the person to pay a lot of money for me, I'm asking to take even more out of the person that is having an issue, which doesn't make sense, because if I have an issue, I also want to pay the person money to help me, because otherwise it will feel disrespectful. So I think that's the link that I'm missing. Now I guess that is what you're going to describe to us, how to make someone feel safe enough to give us money. And even though I think it's manipulation and it doesn't align with my values, that's what I need to do for the person to take responsibility over the problem, and respect my work and the boundaries within my work as well, and take action, right?
Yeah. So that whole process that you've just spoken about, okay, is it's a slightly different thing, okay, and we can get into that. Let's bash through this, and then we'll get into that if we have time, because it's a slightly different way of looking at it that I want you to see. But there's an idea which I'll share with you, which is understanding that charging people for your services is actually an ethical process, okay, and it's actually in your customers' best interests to charge them. Okay, because how many times have you done free things and just not given a fuck? Versus if I pay 5K for something, I'm literally gonna bend backwards over to make sure I get 3+1 on that investment, and I learn like a flipping weapon. Okay, so number one, it's like it's actually in your client's best interest to charge them. Otherwise, they are probably, and it's just the way social conditioning has been, where people are motivated, through money and investment. They talk about this idea, if you've got skin in the game, which is investment in it, you're going to be way more likely to actually take action on the stuff that you're, sort of teaching people. Robbie, I saw you unmute a few times. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I know you wanted to jump into the next part, and it was just a quick question because I know you're referring to calls at the moment. I've been doing a lot of messaging recently. I've been trying to really pick up on DMing because I know that some of this process happens through text, but I also know it's a lot, obviously, potentially harder through text because in call you can pick up on tone of voice, you actually got conversation, and in text it's a bit more sometimes clouded. You can't quite tell how it's going because I've got a guy at the moment who, funnily enough, he said, "Oh no, I know what I meant not to," and he said, "Oh no, I know all the stuff." He said, "I just haven't done it yet. It's just been like 3 years, I haven't done it." And I was like, "Okay," so it's talking about like the idea of having knowledge but not actually practicing anything. So I want to get back to him, but the question I asked him, I was very sincere out of curiosity rather than anything, and he gave me more or less a bit of an essay backwards, saying like, "Yeah, I just keep learning stuff and having no time." So he's actually opened up about it. So now it's about, I suppose, kind of what you're talking about. He's now in a slightly more relaxed state, probably rather than inhibitory, because I texted him about the blue in the first place, a bit more like his offer kind of thing, which I don't probably the right thing.
So just to,
he might be up for a call. So,
just to give you guys a bit of clarity around this, none of this process happens in the DMs. Okay, none of it. So you don't do any of this in messaging. Okay, the sales process only begins when they get on a call with you, and your job in high ticket sales specifically is to get a call booked. Okay, that's when the process happens, because there's way too much nuance, there's way too much them reading into different things and sort of questioning things. And this is why, like, when people message me and ask me things related to coaching, I'm just going to say, hey, jump on a call with me. Because if I send a whole message, like, firstly, I don't know if they're actually understanding what I'm saying. I don't know how they're perceiving my text. I don't know if they're reading in between the lines. Have you ever had someone message you on WhatsApp? You're like, fuck me, that guy's a dickhead. Like, why did he say it that way? And then I see the person and they're like, hey man, what's up? Like, it's you just read between the lines on text, and your job is literally get them on a sales call. So again, maybe this is, again, that could be a conversation for another time where we actually talk about the DM process to book the call, because we're actually going through that, now, Zach and I. But it's like, you kind of want to move away from pen paling people in the DMs. Okay, you want to be as direct as possible. Say, hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm offering. Do you want to call or not? You cut straight through the bullshit, because if someone's interested, they're going to let you know, like, and or they're not, and that's okay. And I would rather get to the no as quickly as possible, and tell someone what my intentions are right up front, no BS. Okay. And especially with what we're doing right now, Zach and I, we're going after like real big whale clients, like big businesses. These people do not have time to message back and forth in the DMs. Okay, so we go in straight up with a personalized message. It's direct. It's like, hey, this is what we're offering. Do you want to speak or not? And if they don't, no problem. Move on to the next person. Okay, so again, that's something that we can talk about, down the line. But I'm really not a fan of trying, especially for high ticket. You could do it for like a lower ticket offer, try and sell them, with a Stripe link and stuff. But I would much rather get someone on a call so I can go through this process, because I know that this is going to give me the best opportunity to actually, see the value. I'm going to flip them from an inhibitory state to an excitatory state. Is that okay, Rob? I think you might have bounced.
Sorry,
there he is.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, all good. I didn't see you. I've got like
redirect.
I've got like 3 people on the screen at once, so I didn't see you. Okay.
Talk about no, redirect. That's the bottom line.
Yes. Yes. Okay, guys, let's press on to the next part. Okay, so for high ticket, high conversion sales, pain is the lowest form of influence and leverage you have. And the dream state is the highest form of leverage you have. Okay. So just remember the dream state, and we'll get into this in a second. But this strategy is essentially based on 2 skills and 3 questions. And so we've spoken about what the 2 skills are. So the first skill is active listening. Okay. And so this involves a conscious effort to understand the complete message being communicated by the other person. Okay. So that means when you go onto the call, like I said, you drop all expectations and you just put your flipping listening cap on, you write notes and you say, I am literally trying to understand, number one, am I actually suited to help this person? So if you think about the difference between, we use this in communication, which is like you're trying to diagnose the situation, okay, and you're trying to ask them literally as many questions to elicitate the different levels they're going to be speaking from, okay. And so active listening, a really good way for you to do this is actually to make note of the things that they've just said to you and repeat it back to them and say, did I hear you correctly? Is that correct? Is that right? Okay, so when you do that, you're actually getting them to confirm that yes, you're actually listening to them. And that's, it's a real powerful open loop skill of making them feel heard and understood. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, when a skilled person is actively listening to you, it feels really nice. Because you're like, oh man, shit, this dude's listening to me. Wow, that's awesome. Compare that to a sales call I was on where the dude was trying to sell to me. And I was saying all of these things to him, but I could just tell it was just going in one ear, out of the next ear. And he was just trying to think about what the next thing in his script was for me. And it just pissed me off and it made me feel like completely disconnected. So that's the first skill. Okay. The second skill is what to listen for. And this basically involves paying close attention to the speaker and trying to understand both the content and the level on their internal map their words are coming from. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys the internal map that you're going to print off and stick next to your computer, and then you're literally trying to listen which one of these levels is this coming from. So that's what I mean by what to listen for. Okay. So that's the internal map. And basically there's 8 levels to listen for, and that's what we're going to go through in a sec. Okay. The questions, so it's 2 skills and 3 questions. And the questions to consider, and it's very important that I preface this and say that this is not a sales script. Okay. I want you to understand that these are tools that you can pick up. Every single one of these questions, each of these questions is a tool that you can pick up at any given moment. And there's obviously a formula, like you want to say these in order, or you want to use these in order to essentially dig, beneath the surface. Okay. So number 1 is what made you decide to book an appointment to have a call with me today? Okay, that's the first question. This question is very, very important in terms of setting the frame for the conversation. All right, so what you're actually doing here is you're getting them now to first and foremost just get straight into the meat of it. There is no rapport building, there's no small talk, there's no nothing. Your first question needs to be, what made you book an appointment today? What motivated you to get on the call? However you want to say it. All right. And so, and I'll just go through the second question because we'll come back to this. But the second question then is, what's important to you about everything you just explained to me? Okay. The third question is then ultimately, what would doing that, or what would achieving that, and what would doing that actually ultimately do for you? Ultimately, what would achieving that do for you, basically? Okay. So if we just take a deep dive into each question, question 1, what made you book the appointment with me today? The rule here is never to let your prospect go into pain, because that sets the inhibitory bias. Okay. So it basically kicks the call off in an inhibitory state. So the job of the first question, the thing you're going to be looking out for, and whatever they say from there, is like, are they in a stress state? Are they talking about their pains? Are they upset? Are they in back pain? Are they struggling with these things? Because the first question reveals to you, are they in a inhibitory state or not? Okay. So that's why that first question is super important. So if they go into the inhibitory story, you need to positively interrupt them as soon as you can. So you don't want them to go on a long babbling session of how shit life is. You need to try and actually, sort of stop them and quickly get them out of the negative state and flip them into positive. And the quicker you frame the excitatory state, the better. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you have to literally say, hey, just stop, stop, stop. You kind of find a moment and then you politely move them into an excitatory state. And the way that you do that is say something along the lines of, okay, so, what you're really trying to say to me is, you would rather be moving in this direction, correct? And so what this basically means is, if someone starts the call by saying everything that they don't want to experience, so if they start the call by saying, hey, I'm feeling back pain, I'm feeling a bit shit about this, I'm not making enough money, what you do to flip them from that state into a positive state is you actually just say, so if I'm hearing you correctly, what you really want to experience is all of the opposites of what they just explained. So if they said to me back pain, I'm really struggling with this. Okay, so what you're really trying to say to me is you really want to get rid of your back pain. You want to be able to move again. You want to be able to have you want to be able to run, blah, 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 blah. So you literally flip the words that they've just explained to you from a negative state into a positive state. Okay, so, like I said, that's really important to understand. It's easy to know what a person wants by developing the ability to hear what they don't want. Okay, so when Danielle says something to me at dinner, I unskillfully try and say, so what you're really trying to say to me is all of this. And then she tells me to fuck off. But, that's kind of what you got to do in that first instance. And then that's what that first question is designed to do. You might get someone who actually is in an excitatory state when they start the call, and that's fantastic. So then you don't actually have to flip them. But that first question will give you an idea as to what state they're in, and it will help you not, firstly, understand what they're actually on the call for in the first place. Okay, so you find the opposite of the pain they want, and you basically dig a little bit deeper into that. So what you're really saying is that you want to experience more time, more freedom. You want to have a freedom-based business. Is that correct? Okay, so when they start to agree with you, that's when they're starting to give up the frame of sadness, inhibition, and they're starting to follow your lead. That's why that first question is so important, and that's why that follow-up is also very important, right? And it's always in your best interest to say things like, is that correct? Is that right? Am I hearing you correctly? Because you're getting them to actually agree with you, and you're not actually assuming that you're hearing them correctly. You want them to be, you want them to basically agree to it. Now, if you hear Paul Counsel talk, how often does he go out and say things? He gives a whole spiel and he says, does that make sense? Is that right? Or what does he say, Zach, specifically? Fuck. It's something like, it's another version of, is that correct? Next time you guys hear him speak, you'll hear it. But he always asks for clarification.
He just says, is that okay?
Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah, that's what he says. Okay. Is that okay, guys? Is that clear? Cool. All right, so question 2. All right, so now that you've done question 1, you've set the frame and you've started to move them into an excitatory state. And this, remember, all 3 questions are actually guiding them to the ultimate excitatory state. So they're starting to feel a little bit more open to what you're saying. They're starting to let down the guard a little bit and to feel a little bit better because they can feel that you're listening to them. And so once they've given you confirmation that what you're saying is actually on the right path, then you want to say, okay, so tell me, man, what's important to you about getting out of back pain? What's important to you about being able to make more money online? Okay, so you feed back the thing that you've basically flipped them into, the opposite of all the pain points they've said. And if they've said directly, this is what I want, well, tell me what's important to you about that. Okay, and so the answers to this question point to values. And this is the 5th highest level on the 8-level internal map worldview, which I'll show you what the worldview is in a second. But your prospect must tell you their values first. This is very, very important. This is a clue for you to write down. Everything that comes from this question, you need to write down. And when I spoke about at the beginning, the born identity thing, Okay. This is the type of shit that you guys are going to be able to hear in every conversation. Okay, you're going to start to hear when you're eliciting these questions, you're going to say, flip me, okay, that's what this person's values are. This is what this person's beliefs are. So write that down. And again, this is going to be used as data for you to start, also picking up patterns in the conversations that you have with people. So again, once they tell you what's important to you about it, what you want to do is just say, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, this is what's important to you. So you want to experience more freedom, more time. You want to go traveling with your partner, do all of it. That's fucking awesome, man. Am I on the right path here? Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, man. That's 100% it. Okay. So then we move into question 3. And this is the ultimate question, really. Okay. So ultimately, what would achieving everything you've just said to me do for you? Okay. And so the answers to this question point directly to their dream state. Okay. The ultimate point of leverage for you. And so this is where you want to be furiously writing this down. All right. And then you want to start talking, you can sort of, you can dig into it a little bit more if you want. You can say, well, tell me a little bit more about that, or tell me how that feels, just let the conversation flow. And just remember, the first time I did this, I literally got on the call, said, hey, what motivated you to get on the call? Oh, fuck, I've gone far. And then I was like, what's important to you about that? And then I said, ultimately, what would that do for you? And that's fine. It actually worked. But, you can take your time actually getting to these questions. If you see them more as checkpoints in the conversation, you can decide after question 2 to dig a little bit deeper into what they said if you want to. So remember that these are just tools for you to have a flowing, open-ended conversation with the person. But as long as you're anchoring the call with these 3 questions, and in your brain, that you're going, from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to the dream state. Okay. And so, this third question, once you uncover the dream state, this basically gives you the most leverage in any sales or persuasive process. And it's the most important perceptual point of entry into their model of the world. Okay, and that's very, very important to understand. And these are essentially the levels. Okay, we spoke about the 8 levels. Okay, and so once you can basically understand that everyone speaks from all of these different levels at different times in their life, most people will actually just communicate at this sort of base level. And a lot of people don't actually even think about what their dreams are, or even openly communicate it to other people. And that's why this process is so important, because you're starting down here with the first question, where they're talking to you about what's happening in their brain, what is the mental chatter going on. You're then going to the second question, which is getting them to express their values. You'll then going to the third question, which is then getting them to express their dream state. And some people never flipping express their dream state. That's why that woman started crying on the phone to me, because no one had ever helped her verbalize what she actually wanted to do. Okay. And so that's why this process of elicitation, hearing, getting them to get deeper and deeper up this ladder is so powerful. And so what you guys really need to do, and this is when I talked about the born identity thing, is you will start to hear what level are people speaking to you from on a daily basis. And you will start to hear when you elicit the different questions you ask, all right, is this coming from their identity? Who are they? Is it coming from their values? Is it coming from their dream state? And then you can use that to positively influence people. All right. And so if we look at thoughts, this is really, how and what, we think about. Okay. So this is the constant stream of mental chatter and self-talk that typically occupies people's minds. Emotions are feeling states that saturate experience with meaning and motivation. And if you guys remember, we talk about emotions so much in marketing, okay? Because this is where most people spend their time. It's like the marketing speaks to the emotions. But anyway, actions, these are people's behaviors and choices that they make. Belief is, the beliefs that, people use to make decisions. It's essentially organizational shortcuts for decision making. Values are core principles and ideals that guide choices and actions in life. Roles are various socially influenced personas people adopt in life. Identity is the core sense of who a person is and what they stand for in life. And dreams are their aspirations, their visions, their ideals, reflecting on the highest potential and desires. Now, when I first saw this and heard this, guys, it was like reading another language. It was gibberish. I didn't really understand this part of the process. Okay. But that's kind of why I did the born identity thing at the start, because when the penny drops and you start hearing these things, like, you'll get it. Okay. So it's just a case of repetition and training. And that's why I actually recommend you print these off and stick it next to your flipping laptop anytime you do a sales call. Because your job is to remember, the second skill is to know what to listen for. What you're listening for is what level are they speaking from. That's what you're listening for. You're trying to see which one are they speaking from. When I first practiced this, all I was listening for was the dream state. Okay, because that was the easiest thing for me to latch hold of. And I knew that the dream state was typically going to come after that third question. So I started to train myself to listen to the dream state first. And now I'm starting to hear these different levels. You know, this one is relatively straightforward, but you've really got to anchor yourself to that ultimate dream state. And so if we think about what that first question elicitates, is usually around thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and, you know, all of these things on how people process and interpret their experiences. So if someone gets on a call, they talk about all of the shit that's going on in their mind, all of their emotions, all of the thoughts, you know, and they're in an inhibitory state or an excitatory state. That's usually one of the levels that they're speaking from. When you ask the second question, which is what's important to you about that, that is usually coming from their values. And this is what people act, you know, people act on things that align with their deep beliefs, motivations, values, and desires. And then the final question, you know, and this is really what, you know, where lasting influence and persuasion, you know, basically requires you to understand, you know, their ultimate dream state, because the dream state is the highest point of leverage you can have over someone. Okay, so you can see that those three questions are designed to get you from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to get to this. Okay, once you're at this point, you've uncovered the gold. That's when you can start to, you know, move into the next part of the sales process, which is, you know, things we've spoken about in the past. Again, like I said, guys, this is like a 6-part series, so we're just focusing on this for now, just in terms of you know, what to listen for. But by carefully eliciting and working with key elements of a person's model of reality, the sum of layers such as beliefs, values, and aspirations, high ticket, high conversion sales process creates a powerful sense of trust and authority, even in the most challenging situations. And this is really what gets people to go, holy fuck, you know, this person really understands me. All right. And we talk about in business all the time that trust compresses the transaction timeline. Well, the way you develop trust with people is getting them to speak from these different levels and leveraging their dream state, active listening, and knowing what level they're speaking from. And what I will say is that there's a whole another level to this, which I'm not going to, we're not going to talk about now. It's, you know, because there's already a lot, but essentially what you start to do in the process is when you notice what levels people are speaking from, you start to connect the dots between the different levels while you're talking to them. And what I mean by that is, if you notice that there is a disparity between their dream state and their actions. So for example, if someone says they want to be financially free, but their actions are that they play, they're on their phone all day, they're not doing the right things, they're not taking action on the work. Well, there's a huge disconnect. And if you can connect their desired result to the action that they're actually doing on a daily basis, that's when the penny drops in people's minds. And that's when they realize that their limiting beliefs and all of the bullshit they tell themselves is actually, a load of crock. So, for example, someone might say that they want more freedom, but their behaviors and actions don't match that outcome. Okay. And so your job, when you're more skilled with this, is to basically connect the different layers, and you basically help them create new neural pathways in the brain by activating regions that don't typically fire together. And this, really creates a dynamic shift in understanding that feels like a whole new world of possibilities. And, really, this is the moment of transformative change when everything clicks into place, old limitations fall away, and new potentials emerge. And that really is what happened when that woman started crying on the call. Like she never had that part of her brain switch on where she spoke about her desired results. She never had that. So when I connected that with her emotions and her thoughts and her beliefs, and I did it accidentally, by the way. I got to this. So I don't know why this is freaking out, but I basically got to this moment where everything clicked into place. All right, guys. So that's part one, really, the sort of slam dunk introduction into this whole sort of way of thinking and process. And like I said at the start of the call, it doesn't need to click for you right away. It doesn't need to make total sense right now. But the key really is what you do with this information. And your job is to fucking practice, practice, practice this until you start to feel like the Bourne Identity, Jason Bourne, in the cafe, obviously without amnesia. All right. So, guys, questions, thoughts, feelings?
I got a question, Luke.
Yes.
So if we're into that dream state, they're into that dream state, and then turning that into like the offer, being like, okay, well, this is the solution that I have for you. Is there certain ways of doing that that kind of connects with what we're doing now and not accidentally putting them back into a sort of
Yeah.
inhibitory state?
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So there's a bunch more questions that actually come with this. Okay, but those are the three most important ones. And because the reason I'm giving you those two now is because you guys can literally practice that with everyone you speak to. But typically, once you've landed on that dream state, that's where you can start to transition into questions like, look, well, that's fucking amazing, blah, 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 blah. I imagine you probably want to move pretty quickly on that. Is that correct? Okay. So
Yeah.
you start to transition into urgency, and it's like, okay, well, how quickly are you looking to start? I'm based on everything that you've just explained to me now, I'm very confident that I can help you. How quickly would you be looking to get started on something like this? Okay.
Yeah.
And what I would then say is, if they say next week or immediately or whatever, I'll be like, and usually they will say, okay, well, tell me, like, how do I work with you? What's the process? How do I do these things? Then you can start to talk about your offer. Okay. But it comes after all of this information, all of this digging. And then, typically what I'll do is like, yeah, cool. Like, do you mind me actually just running through exactly how I can help you? Is that cool? Yes, that's cool. Okay, well, what my process basically does is it helps, it basically puts you on a fast track to achieve everything you've just explained to me from the dream state. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, you do that if you believe you can help the person. That's obviously a huge thing there. And one thing Paul said to me before is like, if on the call, if you can basically tell that you can't help this person, or you don't think this person's the right fit for you, it's just best to basically end the call as soon as possible. And one thing he said to me which stuck was, look, to be honest, man, I don't know if I can help you, but I know someone who can. Let me send you a link to one of my buddies. Okay. And that will just leave them with such a good taste in their mouth that even though they
Mm.
couldn't work with you, they're like, he's helping me, he's connected me to someone else who probably can. And the person you're referring to will appreciate that too. But that's for you to sort of discern.
Cool. That makes sense. Thanks, Luke.
Hey Luke,
Hey, brother.
I feel like I feel like you just switched me from an inhibitory to excitatory state with just this presentation because
Great, great.
I've been having more calls lately, and after I had a start where the sales call went really well, like I got the sale, but also like the sales call just felt comfortable and good. I've had a couple where it's been basically they just go onto the call and what motivated you to get on the call, and they just speak 10-15 minutes about like everything that's painful, and I just been waiting for them, like listening, but they've gone so far down in like the inhibitory state that I haven't been able to get them to excitatory state.
Yeah.
So that's been like that's been challenging. So yeah, I'm gonna look back like you had a slide on it. I saw that it was like stop them early or like just go in and ask them, do you want to get here or from here to here and get the excitatory state? Because that's been like probably the biggest challenge looking back is like people often come to these calls with like
Yeah.
I am in the shit.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Super like yeah, in the shit, really.
Yeah. So look, I think that's going to be a really great adjustment for you, because what I used to do is when someone would get on a call and they would spill their life story out to me and they would, be really upset about things and stuff, I would be like, man, that really sucks, doesn't it? That's what a fucking bastard. And then I'm like playing into the drama and I'm making it
Mhm.
worse. I'm like literally making it so much worse. So you want to basically avoid the drama as much as you can and not actually add to the drama. Okay. And that's why, okay, so what you're really trying to say to me is you want to experience all of these things. The boom, 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 boom. Would that be accurate? How would that feel for you if you were to actually, do that? Oh man, I'd feel fucking amazing. And so you can add those little extra, questions in if you feel like it's natural part of the call, because at the end of the day, it is literally just an open conversation with you and the other person. Dan,
Mhm.
Dan said drama bonding is a place where you don't want to be. Toxic sense of connect, correct. And I used to dive right into that. I was like, bro, mate, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. So
Yeah.
it's, and again, look, this process has actually helped me become a better coach for my clients too. Okay. So, this goes for clients just as well as it goes for sales prospects, because it's not actually just about it's not just about sales. Like, for me as a coaching perspective, like I get a lot of one-on-one calls where people get on the call and they literally are in an inhibitory state, and my job on the coaching call is to get them out of it. And I've done that to Paul Counsel before. Like, I've got on the call, I said, Paul, I'm feeling really shit, this is all this stuff I'm struggling with, boom, 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 and he will flip me into an excitatory state. And that's been really fun to be on the receiving end of that, because he obviously does it so skillfully. And he'll do it in a way the way I don't even know he's doing it, but he will remind me all of the good shit I'm doing. He'll remind me about the stuff I'm working on. He'll remind me about, so, and then immediately I'm like, I end the call and I'm feeling buzzing. Okay, so again, and look, I joke about the thing with Danielle, because it is harder, because she does know I'm learning this stuff. But there have been times where I'm like, okay, how can I get her into an excitatory state that doesn't involve me asking these questions? So it's like trying to, whether I, try and do something, goofy, or try and make her feel happy, or try and do something with, physically or whatever. There you don't have to ask these questions in that exact form. These are just frameworks. So, you can ask the question in your own way. So, Zach, you flipped me this, you flipped me this morning. Yeah, exactly. So we had a meeting this morning, and Zach was fully in an inhibitory state. And so I would have in the past gone into, Zach, do this, this, and this. But I just literally asked him questions, and I got him to think about, what do you actually really want to do? And he was like, oh, I want this. Okay, I was like, cool. Like, tell me about that a bit. And then, so that's good to know, Zach, that you felt that way, bro.
One more thing as well is you just briefly touched on it, so I'm looking forward. You're probably going to talk more about it. But it's like the beliefs, especially for me, people have so many beliefs and they're like really deep rooted. So
Yeah.
yesterday I had like a couple of people here in the clinic as well, and I'm just like, how am I gonna like like explain these beliefs and actually get them to where they can do something positive for themselves. So I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to that.
So
Like,
one thing that'll help you actually in this process, because, and this is still something I'm trying to figure out. So like I don't have this locked down and mastered, but the way that you connect the different layers in someone's brain. Okay, so if someone's got deep rooted beliefs, what you basically want to try and connect is you want to connect that belief to that dream state. Okay, so you're like, okay, so you're telling me that you want to experience this and this, but you're also telling me this, like, what do you think about that? So you're kind of getting them to see the contradiction. So um a bit of learning that I'm doing at the moment is on the Socratic method. Okay. So the Socratic questioning method is obviously by Socrates, but they used to do this when they would have arguments and have conversations with people, sort of in the old school Greek parliament or whatever. And he would use a questioning process to get and elicitate people or get them to come to the truth of their experience and their matter on their own. Because what he believed was the most powerful form of persuasion is getting someone to come to the realization, on their own accord without trying to convince someone. So if you see the best politicians, if you see the best lawyers, they're not going at someone guns blazing. They're asking questions, aren't they? So if you watch any courtroom movies, what are the lawyers doing at the front? They're saying, okay, so you were here at this time of the night. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Oh, so you're telling me when you were there, and this person's telling me you were there. Well, tell me a bit more about that. And so they corner someone into a flipping, they get them to trip up and actually end up convincing, sort of what's it called, like incriminating themselves or whatever the word is. But that's what lawyers do. They use the Socratic method. So the highest flipping thing, and this is what I'm aiming for, is to be able to use the Socratic method to get people to connect to those different levels: dream state, beliefs, values, thoughts, feelings, emotions. That's really the ultimate goal that we're moving towards. But like I said, when I first learned this, I was just focused on dream state because I knew that was the highest point of leverage I had. So all of you can just try and listen to the dream state first, and the rest of the levels will actually make themselves aware. And I won't go into the next part now because there's a lot. Okay, guys, any other thoughts or questions? Okay. So look, guys, you know, hopefully, you'll take this and go practice it. So it's not just a sort of spiritual entertainment, because this is powerful shit. And our conversations on these calls will be so much more productive if you can come to me with feedback and problems that you're struggling with on a weekly basis. Okay, because that's literally what the purpose of these calls are. It's literally for me to help you troubleshoot problems. Okay, so like I said in the group before, like one thing I do with Paul is every time a problem pops up in my life, I literally put it into my notes app, and when I get on the call, I've got my fucking list and I go through the list. I want you guys to basically be able to come to these calls and ask questions, because that's where you're going to get the most value from this. Otherwise, what the hell's the point? All right. Okay, guys. Sweet. See you later. Peace.